Beer hats. Oh no! Battles deep into the night has left the stadium entirely.
You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast. I'm Andrew Ellis, and today's episode is presented by Razorback Apparel. Go to razorbacks.com and use the promo code HOGSBY20 to get 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. We appreciate them. And we got a lot to get into today because a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks here. Appreciate you guys for your patience with the Baumbastic Podcast, and hope you enjoyed our interview yesterday with Jackson Kersher. We're going to be talking a lot about pitching on today's podcast, and Jackson Kersher, the Oklahoma transfer, certainly figures to be a big part of that. So go check out that interview with him. Had a really good time. Enjoyed him taking some time to do it. Got a fun personality. I think he's going to fit in well at Arkansas, and I'm a big fan of his potential on the mound. And so we're going to talk about him and a lot of other guys on this Razorback pitching staff and sort of what it all means. But we got a lot of news in the last couple of weeks. One, Arkansas does not get Joey Volchko, the number one transfer portal pitcher. They will not keep their streak alive of having the number one portal guy in each class. They do not get Joey Volchko. He chooses Georgia, who came in late, made a late push. Everyone kind of believed it was between Arkansas and LSU for a while there. Georgia makes a late push, gets his teammate from Stanford, and they're all buddy-buddy there in Athens, so a big pickup for Wes Johnson. And so where do the Hogs turn from there? We're going to talk a little bit about that. We got some answers recently because Arkansas gets a big-time left-handed pitcher out of the transfer portal in Jacob Imoto. We'll talk about him in a second. But also we got news yesterday, almost exactly 24 hours ago. Parker Coil will be returning for his senior year at Arkansas. Of course, led Arkansas in ERA this past year, brings a ton of experience, throws a ton of strikes. You know him. You love him. You know how big that is. I don't have to explain that. But we are going to talk about just how big that addition is and what it means for Arkansas. But before we get into today's show, I want to talk to you about our boys over at Hickey and Hole Law. Divorce and custody cases are just too important to try and face alone. Let Hickey and Hole Law provide you with persistent and diligent representation to help guide you through the entire process. They have handled thousands of family law cases and have experienced nearly every scenario that may come up. The foundation of a strong attorney-client relationship is honesty and trust. Hickey and Hole Law prides themselves on building relationships with their clients by providing honest, principled advice and representation. Hickey and Hole Law, they have offices across the state of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Fort Smith, Little Rock, and Mena. You can call them today at 479-434-2414, or you can check out their website, visit hickeyandhole.com, or scan the QR code in the top right corner of your screen. It's Hickey and Hole Law. Things are about to get better. So we're going to take a look at, by the end of the show, I'm just going to pull up a list of pretty much every pitcher that is expected to be on the roster going in the next season, or at least going into the fall, at least where things stand here today on July 29th, and sort of just kind of assess where Arkansas is at as a pitching staff. I have some thoughts in terms of do they have enough and sort of how it compares to the past couple of years, because Arkansas's had some pretty good pitching staffs over the years. They've set the bar really high as a program, and when you set the bar really high as a program, you have to kind of keep living up to that standard. And so we're going to take a little bit of a big picture, 20,000-foot view at this pitching staff and really feel, what we think about it. Like, do we think it's good enough? Do we think they need to go out and get one more addition? There's not many guys left, but there are a couple names, and maybe we can talk about them. But really just how do we feel about this Arkansas pitching staff? But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Parker Coil and how big of a deal his return is for the Arkansas Razorbacks. So if you remember, we covered the MLB draft. We talked about pretty much everyone that was drafted, everyone that wasn't drafted, what it means, how important that is. And one of the guys that was drafted was Parker Coil, who was taken in the 16th round by the Milwaukee Brewers. And historically speaking, anytime a junior gets drafted, pretty much anywhere, I always kind of expect them to go. Now, of course, not all situations is the same. Of course, if you're getting drafted later, which in this case, Parker Coil, taken in the 16th round in a 20-round draft, not like we were expecting him to sign for $3 million or anything crazy like that. I just kind of assumed he would sign because you're not going to have that opportunity next year. Of course, there are NIL packages. I'm sure he's not coming back to school for free or anything like that. But he wound up telling the Milwaukee Brewers to kiss his ass and is going to run it back at Arkansas for one more year. I think it's a big deal. I mean, for anything, no matter what your pitching staff looks like, whether you have a ton of lefties on your roster, whether you've got a bunch of righties and need a lefty, whether you need a starter, whether you need a closer, middle reliever, doesn't matter. Parker Coil can help your baseball team. And really at any level, honestly. I mean, he's got the stuff, he's got the experience, he's got the mentality to do it. The guy led Arkansas in ERA last year, finished his junior year with a 1.27 ERA, had 24 strikeouts, just 2 walks in 21 1/3 innings of work, has 62 career innings under his belt. Also has thrown another 50 innings in the Cape across 2 seasons the past couple summers. So there's a lot of experience there with Parker Coil, and he's coming off of kind of a year where it all came together for him. I mean, when we talk about Parker Coil, we talk a lot about these guys that have this like big time stuff and this, fastball that's electric in the upper 90s. Parker Coil is not one of those guys. And his fastball on a good day will be 90, 91, maybe 92 here and there. But really, he doesn't even really throw the fastball all that much. He throws that cut a lot, throws that little breaking ball that he has. It's a 3,000 RPM breaking ball, and gets a lot of swings and misses with it, gets guys off the barrel. You don't really see a ton of guys square up Parker Coil. And again, I mentioned the 2 walks in 21 1/3 innings. Not the biggest sample size. I know he missed some time, missed about, I guess it was 6 weeks there with his sort of back injury. He's like, he has a weird back injury that he had that kept him out of action. And Arkansas certainly missed his services while he was out. But he just fills up the strike zone. And that's why I think when we look ahead to next year and what Parker Coil is going to do, you can talk yourself into a lot of different possibilities because the command and the pitchability are certainly there, that ability to mix speeds. And would his arsenal look a little bit different as a starter? Yeah, I'm sure it would. Like I said, he barely threw his fastball his junior year. Maybe he'd have to throw some heaters a little bit more in a starting role, but honestly, I've seen some discussions, online already. I don't think anybody should be dead set on Parker Coil being a starting pitcher and being like, hey, he has to start. I mean, we need a guy. He's got to be the guy. I also don't think anyone should be dead set on Parker Coil just being a reliever, because I've also seen people say that, well, he can't start. He's too valuable in the bullpen, which he is very valuable. But I think, honestly, one, it's too early. I mean, it's late July. Definitely not time to be assigning roles. But again, that strike throwing ability is why, you can really talk yourself into it. Because again, it just comes down to getting outs. And really it's about how these guys get outs. Not all outs are created equal. You get in a 3-1 count and you groove a fastball right down the middle and the guy just kind of misses it and pops it out. That's not something you can really count on happening time and time again. But if you're ahead 0-2, ahead 1-2, constantly getting ahead of hitters, constantly being on the attack, on the aggressive, that's something that's pretty reliable. And, in baseball, strike throwers win, man. And it's not just as simple as throwing strikes equals outs, but in a big picture, in a big sample size, over the course of a season, it's really nice to have that stability, that firm foundation of just getting ahead of most hitters. Because as you know, I mean, listen, we could pull up maybe we'll do that one day. We'll pull up the numbers, but when you're in a 2-0 count, your batting average is way, way higher. No matter who you are, your batting average is going to be way higher than it is in a 1-1 count or a 1-2 count or an 0-2 count or an 0-1 count. And so that simple ability to just fill up the strike zone with 3+ pitches, and I say 3+ pitches, that's probably a stretch, 3 pitches. And I would say his breaking ball, his curveball is a legitimate plus pitch. I would say his cutter, which is really, again, become kind of his go-to pitch, I would define that as probably a plus pitch. Certainly is one that gets him a lot of those easy outs. I mean, he's not a super high strikeout rate guy, although he does average just over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. I think his strikeout rate was a little bit even higher, actually, as a sophomore, despite having a higher ERA. Parker Coil does get plenty of swings and misses, more than you would expect for a guy that's kind of 89 to 91. And again, it's because those other 2 pitches are so good. But I think that cutter is kind of the reason why he's able to get by, because even if you're not getting a swing and miss, if you're throwing that cutter in, even if you do, let's say you fall behind and it's in a 1-0 count, hitters thinking a fastball's coming and you get that cutter and it's just a few inches off of where he thought it was going to be, instead of it being a barrel and a ball in the gap, that's going to the second baseman. That's an easy ground ball. That's an easy out. And so again, when it comes down to forecasting roles for these guys, and look, we're going to talk about the rest of the pitching staff and who all can do what and what roles we can trust them in. That's what pitching is. Finding out how to get hitters out and then doing it time and time and time again. And again, I mentioned earlier, it's so much about how these hitters get guys out. And pretty much every pitcher on Arkansas's roster does it in different ways. I mean, you watch Christian Fauch pitch. It's going to be high velocity fastballs, top of the zone, splitter behind it when he gets ahead of these guys, but really it's just mostly fastball. That's how he gets hitters out. And we watch Christian Fauch and we watch him throw hard, and we're like, can he do that week in and week out? And there were weeks where it was up and down, but it's like that premise, that is how Christian Fauch gets guys out. And then you watch someone like Gage Wood, and you watch his no-hitter. It's pretty much the same sequences over and over again. He would mix in the curveball here and there, but it was a lot of fastballs at the top of the zone. That's how he gets hitters out. He has the stuff to do it. And then you look at someone like Gabe Gackle, who can get you out with the fastball, can get you out with the slider, can get you out with the curveball, can even mix in the changeup to lefties. He has a bunch of different ways he can get you out. But really, I mean, Hagen Smith, fastball, slider. It was very, very simple what Hagen Smith did, and he could do it time and time again. He could do it for 6 innings straight. And so again, with Parker Coil, will he be doing it for 5-6 innings a weekend? I don't know. Will he be doing it for, 2 different outings in a weekend, throwing an inning on Friday, throwing an inning on Sunday? I don't know. We can kind of figure that out. But I think when you look at this roster at Arkansas and you look at some of the other arms on this team, there's a lot of what if. There's a lot of guys that I love, guys that I'm going to talk to you about in a second that I'm really high on and think they have a chance to really be big-time plus reliable arms for Arkansas, and they have not yet proven that they can consistently get hitters out at this level. And that's just a fact, and that's not a knock on those guys. It's just kind of there's a lot of projectability. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of assuming that these guys are going to get better, assuming that these guys are going to take those strides in their careers. And look, Matt Hobbs has made a living doing just that. And so it's reasonable to expect a guy like Ethan McIlvain from Vanderbilt to be a lot better and to take those strides and be better as a junior and become a guy for Arkansas. But I think it's really important to have a guy like Parker Coil who you just kind of know what you have. And you can decide. I mean, it's up to Dave Van Horn. It's up to Matt Hobbs how they want to deploy Parker Coil. But there's not a ton of mystery there. We know what this guy can do. We know what he's capable of. We know he can get hitters out on a consistent basis. And that's the name of the game. It's not rocket science. You get guys out, you get to pitch. And Parker Coil did a lot of that. And Arkansas certainly missed him while he was out. And he's certainly going to be asked to get some big time outs for Arkansas. Real quick, I don't have a huge scouting report breakdown, but Parker Coil is not the only left-handed pitcher that Arkansas has, I guess, added. Did you really add a guy if he was already on your campus? But another guy that we weren't necessarily expecting to be on the 2026 roster, who now is, Parker Coil added to that list, Jacob Imoto. I hope I'm saying that right. It's spelled Imoto. Comes from a JUCO out in California. Arkansas added him on, I believe that was Sunday night. He tweeted out his announcement that he was going to be a Razorback. I like this arm, man. He wasn't a super highly touted recruit. I believe he was just in the top 500 range for his class last year. Ends up going to a JUCO, Palamo, some junior college out in California, in the San Diego area, up there in Northern California with some of our other boys like Helfrich and Gackle. And during his freshman year at the JUCO level, made 20 appearances, threw 44 innings, all was a relief pitcher here in these situations, had 52 strikeouts, 18 walks, really good strikeout to walk ratio in 44 innings of work there. 6'2", 200 left-handed pitcher. For the most part, I couldn't find many of his outings, but from all the reports and reading all I could, he was in the low 90s, was like a 90 to 92 type of arm as a freshman at the JUCO level. Had a really good ERA as well. What did I say his ERA? It was like 2.44, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. I didn't write it down. But a low 2s ERA. Had some outings. I believe he had one outing where he went 5 innings. Went over 3 innings in 3 or 4 of his outings this past year. So he's been stretched out a little bit, but really all you need to know, lefty, fastball, slider, changeup, a little bit of projection there too. And he's coming out. He only played 1 year at the JUCO level, so he's going to be eligible for at least 3 years. We'll see what they do with all these JUCO rules, but not just some guy that you're bringing in that's going to leave in a year. Could be a multi-year developmental piece as well, and so I think that's intriguing. But with him and Parker Coil, that's 2 left-handed pitchers that are going to have a chance. I mean, one that's definitely going to help you out in Parker Coil, and then one in Imoto who's probably going to have a good chance to help you out as well. Certainly bolsters up Arkansas's left-handed pitching, and now we'll pull up the list in a second, but I feel pretty good about Arkansas's situation with what they have on the pitching staff in terms of lefties. And about 10 days ago, a lot of people were kind of looking around like, damn, does Arkansas have any lefties? Like, I mean, I know we like Cole Gibbler and McElvain, okay, but like, what's going to happen here? Like, we kind of need Big Tuna. Is Big Tuna our best lefty? Like, what's going on now today? We'll pull up the list in a second, but Arkansas feels a little bit better about their left-handed pitching situation, and so we look forward to seeing that. Just a real quick number here before we move on. A real quick number I wanted to show out here. Parker Coil this past year, now again, just over 20 innings. He missed some time, so he would have thrown more innings. This sample size would have changed. Perhaps the numbers would have changed. But this past year at Arkansas, Parker Coil had a whopping 0.8 walks per 9 innings. And this is a metric you hear me throw out there every now and then. Anything under 3, if you're averaging less than 3 walks per 9 innings, you have like well above average command. Like, you are a big time strike thrower. In fact, Arkansas had 7 pitchers on their roster, not counting Hunter Dietz, who did technically fit this criteria because he did not walk anyone in his like 1.2 innings of work or whatever. I'm not counting him. Arkansas had 7 pitchers that had enough innings to qualify that were under 3 walks per 9 innings for their 2025 season. You had Tate McGuire at 2.9, who, by the way, has that number is at 1.9 this summer in the Cape. We'll talk about him in a second. Landon Beidelshees just cracked the list at 2.9 as well. Aiden Jimenez at 2.8. Obviously, both those guys were drafted and are moving on. Steele Eves, who did not pitch a ton, his was at 1.9, so a really good number for the freshman there. Gage Wood had a 1.7 walks per 9 innings, which is insane because he had 16.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Gage Wood is a freak first-round pick. And Will McIntyre had 1.4 walks per 9 innings. Will McIntyre also had the lowest whip on the team. And so Parker Coil sitting there at 0.8. Nobody even close to him. Now, again, 2 walks, 21 innings, like it, not the largest sample size of all time. I imagine that number has no choice but to go up a little bit. But if you look at it on paper, Parker Coil could afford to really he's probably not, depending on what his role is going to be, most likely not going to replicate that 1.27 ERA, but Parker Coil could have a lot of regression and still be one of Arkansas's top arms next year. And we'll see if he's able to make it work. So really excited about his return and all the possibilities. And again, I know everybody kind of wants to know roles and who's the setup guy, who's the game 3 starter, who's the game 2. Honestly, man, and this is saying something if it's coming from me, I think it's too early to even project that. Not that we can't have the conversation and sort of say who we like. And I can tell you who I like. I mean, I like Cole Gibbler as a weekend starter. I obviously like Gabe Gackel as a weekend starter. I don't dislike the idea of Parker Coil as a weekend starter. I'm not ready to proclaim he will be the third guy or that I even necessarily think that's the route they should go, but I'm definitely considering it, especially with just how often he throws strikes. I think he could be a little bit of you think about what Arkansas did with their game 3 role last year. It was a guy that they were just trying to eat 3, 4, 5 innings out of, short leash, nothing crazy. So you can maybe argue Parker Coil's overqualified for that role. I think there's a few different options there, but again, I think it's a little bit too early to really be forecasting roles, but I just want to kind of take a look at the roster and see kind of where we're at and how we feel about this whole thing. Before we do that, I want to talk to you guys about our boys over at Freedom Boat Club. Summer is finally here, and where is a better place to spend your summer than on the lake? If you don't own a boat, doesn't matter. You don't need to. Freedom Boat Club of Arkansas has you covered. Freedom Boat Club gives you access to boats without the commitment. This is boating that fits your lifestyle, fun, flexible, and stress-free. They take care of the boat so you can simply enjoy the moment. From Cape Cod to the California coast, your next boat day awaits. With 3 locations in Arkansas, lake time is closer than you think. Whether it's Greer's Ferry, Lake Hamilton, or a day on the river in Little Rock, Freedom Boat Club of Arkansas will help make your summer in the natural state the best one yet. Check out their website at www.freedomboatclubar.com today to learn more about the benefits of joining the club. We appreciate Freedom Boat Club. We're actually going to be going down a couple weeks. John and I, maybe Curtis. He's got a very pregnant wife. We'll see if we're able to make it work, but we might be doing a show from a boat, so that'll be very exciting. So again, I want to pull up a list here in a second that just has every left-handed pitcher on the roster right now and every right-handed pitcher on the roster right now, and we'll sort of just talk about the guys, and you can see it on paper and kind of make your determination for how you feel about it. But I was just kind of thinking about it because, again, the Joey Volchko news, one, I want to apologize to you guys for hyping it up and being like, hey, yeah, I think this is going to happen. Like, I think it's trending toward Arkansas. Everything's great. Georgia swoops in and they get their guy. Congratulations to Wes Johnson and his staff. And, that sucks. And I think the Razorback coaching staff was disappointed by that. I don't think they are without like backup options. I think maybe even this Parker Coil move is maybe a little bit of a, hey, we need to get some stability left on this 2026 pitching staff. Maybe the moves are connected. I really don't know. And I think there are other options. I mean, there's still the last remaining, if we're looking at the portal, they're really the only guy that I feel like fits the criteria. He wouldn't be an adequate like Joey Volchko replacement. And Volchko is like a potential first-round pick, like we talked about. But if they were to go out and get a transfer portal guy that they felt like could start, I think the only guy that really fits that criteria would be Logan Reddyman from San Diego, who really a lot of teams in the SEC have had their eye on. He's coming off a really good sophomore year. Not the most tantalizing stuff in the country at all, but a really, really above average feel for pitching, really good command. He's having a great, great summer in the Cape right now. I guess he just finished up. He's pitching with the Orleans Firebirds. I believe on 6'4" analytics, the last I checked, he was right around the top 50 range in terms of overall prospects. There's guys that enter, guys that dip out. The draft happened. That was a while ago. I don't know where he's ranked, but he's probably, if I were to give you a name of someone that Arkansas could go after that would maybe be the Volchko replacement, I think Logan Reddyman would be that. I don't know if Arkansas is going to, maybe get in that mix late. I know there's a few other SEC teams. I mean, South Carolina had their eye on him for sure. I think LSU was in that mix. Of course, now they went out and got Cooper Moore. I don't imagine they're still there, but we'll see where he ends up. He's probably like one of the last top arms left because, again, it's pretty late in the game. A lot of rosters have already been built. A lot of moves have already been made. A lot of money's been spent. So I don't think there's a ton of teams going out there just whipping around $1 million looking to be in bidding wars. And there's not a lot of players out there, honestly, that fit that kind of criteria that you would like really be looking at them, looking to spend a ton amount of money. But I think that's maybe the one guy you could go, like if Arkansas were to try and go get a starter out of the portal, I think he's probably the only option left. If not, it's going to have to come from one of these guys on this list that I'm about to show you. And so let's go ahead and start here and let's pull up the left-handed pitching. So these are all the left-handed pitchers on the roster. For those that are not watching on YouTube, I'll just read it out to you. You've got Cole Gibbler, sophomore, Parker Coil, senior, Ethan McIlvain, the Vanderbilt transfer, a junior, Colin Fisher, a junior, entering his third year at Arkansas. You've got Hunter Dietz, who, by the way, just finally had an outing in the Cape where he pitched 2 innings and did not allow a run. Maybe, I don't know if that'll be the last outing for him this summer, but I was happy to see that. He'll be a redshirt sophomore next year in terms of eligibility. Jacob Imoto, who I just referenced, he will be a rising sophomore. And then you got a couple of freshmen in Joey Lorenzini and Ty Briscoe, a couple more left-handed arms. So that's 8 left-handed pitchers on the roster. Arkansas's roster that they took into the 2025 season consisted of 8 left-handed pitchers. So pretty similar in terms of numbers. Of course, you don't have a Zach Root in this group, but I do think between Gibbler, Coil, McIlvain, I think those are 3 guys that whatever their roles are going to be, those are 3 guys that I would say are like pretty close to definitive weekend options. Again, whether that's starting, closing, everything in between, I think those are 3 guys that when you cut down to SEC play and you really shorten up the list of who all's helping you, I think Gibbler, Coil, and McIlvain are like pretty much locks to be in that mix. Colin Fisher's had an interesting summer up in the Cape, hasn't gone super well for him. I'll be interested to see. I can't wait to see him like up close this fall and this spring to see if maybe they add a little bit of some juice there to his repertoire, maybe add some strength, maybe add a little different level to his game, and maybe he just needs to turn that corner mentally, which, by the way, everything I just said about Colin Fisher would apply to Parker Coil this time last year, and he was able to do it. So certainly don't want to count out Big Tuna yet, and I definitely don't think now is the time to do it, even after, again, like a kind of up and down summer in the Cape. I'm still keeping my Big Tuna stock. I think Colin Fisher's got a role on this team. I think he can help. He's now got some experience under his belt. Would love to see him really take that next step forward. And, of course, all of that certainly could apply to Hunter Dietz, who still remains one of the more talented, intriguing players on the roster. We'll see if he's going to be healthy and what he's able to do. But I'm just glad he was able to go out and get some experience this summer. We touched on Imoto just a few minutes ago. Lorenzini, who we played some videos of a couple weeks ago, I'm really, really high on Joey Lorenzini. I think he's going to pitch for Arkansas. Will it be as a midweek starter? Will it be just kind of in garbage time? Will he just maybe get lost in the shuffle? I don't know. But Joey Lorenzini is a guy that, again, I'm not trying to declare for you for sure, hey, definitely going to be pitching on the weekends and being a stud. But I think Joey Lorenzini is a guy that if he's not ready, you've got a lot of left-handed options. You've got some experience. You've got some stability there with Coil and Gibbler at the top, and McElvain's is a really interesting prospect. You've got some older guys and even a guy like Colin Fisher who is at the very least an innings eater for you. So there's not a ton of pressure on Joey Lorenzini to come right in and be the guy. But I do think if I were a betting man, I would say he's most likely going to figure into this conversation. And so again, whether Cole Gibbler is your Saturday starter or your closer, or maybe Parker Coil is your Sunday starter or your setup guy or whatever, no matter what, at all times, I feel like Arkansas should have minimum 2 really solid left-handed options available at all times, which is a weapon, man. In any inning, you got a big left-handed bat coming up, whether it's the 5th inning, the 8th inning, or the 9th inning. It's nice to just have those lefties available. And I think Arkansas is going to consistently have a ton of lefties available. And again, I think that those top 3 guys, I'll pull up the list real quick. I think those top 3 guys there in Gibbler, Coil, McElvain, I think right there, that's going to be your bread and butter for your left hand. I think those guys are going to account for a decent chunk of your innings, a lot of high leverage work, 3 very different arsenals. You got Parker Coil, who we just talked about, is 88 to 91, really is a, kind of throw soft stuff at you. Ethan McElvain, big old 98-mile-an-hour fastball, good old-fashioned hardball for you. And then Cole Gibbler is kind of the mix of both of those guys, where he's got a fastball in that 92, 94 range. We'll see if they add to that a little bit. Got that wipeout slider, has some really good command behind it as well, has an unreal strikeout rate. I feel like you have a nice little mix of skill sets there with those 3 guys. And then again, some really talented guys that I'd like to see maybe take that next step forward and some young blood there. I love what Arkansas has done with their left-handed pitching here in a pretty short amount of time. I just feel like overall it's, I don't know if it was a question mark, but it has certainly been answered this offseason, in my opinion. Now we'll move to the right-handed pitching, where I feel like, again, there's a little bit more projection and a little bit more assuming that some of these guys are going to be better, and honestly, a little bit more discussion. I don't think it's as definitive of who's going to be your top guy. So here are the right-handers. Again, for those not watching on YouTube and don't see these beautiful little graphics that I put together, Gabe Gackle, he'll be a junior. Of course, you're expecting him to be likely your ace and really your top right-handed pitcher. You got Jackson Kershaw, the Oklahoma transfer. He will be a sophomore this upcoming season. You got James DeCramer coming from Oregon State. He'll be a redshirt sophomore after a solid season at Oregon State. You got Steele Eaves, who's going to be a sophomore, coming off of a massive summer out in Santa Barbara. Did not allow a run, did not walk anyone. Throws, I think it was, he made 10 appearances. I think it was maybe 12 innings or something like that. Just absolutely shoved. Good strikeout rate. Again, didn't walk anybody, only gave up 4 hits, had a whip under 0.5. I don't think I've ever seen that at any level of baseball. Just absolutely shoved. We'll see what his role is going to look like this time next year. Tate McGuire, a junior Tate McGuire, man, actually, let me save the Tate McGuire rant. You've also got Carson Wiggins. He'll be a sophomore. Will he be healthy? We'll see. Cooper Dossett, he will be, actually, I put sophomore there. He's going to be a redshirt junior. He will be a redshirt junior. I don't know why I put sophomore there. What an idiot, boneheaded mistake I made there. And then you got Isaac Goddard, the transfer from McLennan. He will be a junior as well. And then I had to lump a couple of these freshmen together just so I get it all to fit in the graphic there. But you got Jordan Martin, you got Peyton Lee, a couple freshmen there, and then Mark Brissy, in-state kid, and Wren. You got a couple more freshmen there as well. Kind of had to cram them all in there, so I apologize for that. But again, these are your right-handed pitchers. And, with the lefties, I had your kind of definitive top 3 there that I think there's really not much controversy about. Gibbler, Coil, McElvain. Those are kind of the guys you can Sharpie in as weekend arms. Gabe Gackle, of course, fits that description. You can Sharpie him in. If Carson Wiggins is available, if he's healthy, of course, he fits that description as well. I might even go as far as to say that about Cooper Dossett, who has pitched in SEC games, had some nice moments. But is he going to be available? What's that going to look like? Is he going to still be the same guy? Will he be a little bit better? It's a little bit too early to tell, so I don't want to put too much on his plate before we find out what he's available to eat. But you look at some of these guys, again, Kersher, DeCramer, Eves, and McGuire, all 4 arms that are like intriguing. I like them. None of those 4 guys I just listed have proven they can get SEC hitters out on a consistent basis. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, Kersher's pitched in the SEC. He's gotten some experience. He only threw 12 innings at Oklahoma this past year. And some of those innings didn't go super well. And so I like Kersher. I mean, I had him on the show yesterday. He's a stud. I really do. I am very high on him. I think this time next year, we're going to be talking about him as a really intriguing draft prospect going into his junior year. But to say he's a super proven commodity would be a lie. James DeCramer, I think he did some nice things at Oregon State, finished his year really strong, and I think he kind of came on and maybe found some things late. I'm intrigued. I like his stuff. I like the way he throws. I like his mentality. Not a super proven commodity at this level, just simply, a fact of the matter. Steel Eves, again, I just told you, he had this unbelievable summer. It's very reasonable to assume that Steel Eves is going to have a bigger role, going to be better, going to be a good option for Arkansas next year. Hell, he put up good numbers as a freshman, but the fact of the matter is he is an unproven commodity at this level in the SEC in these high leverage situations. Same, of course, applies to Tate McGuire, who pitched a little bit more as a sophomore, had some nice moments, also pitched on the weekends in some big spots early in the year. Definitely not a proven commodity as a bona fide SEC pitcher at this point. And, of course, that would apply to Isaac Goddard coming from the JUCO ranks and all 4 of those freshman right-handed arms there. Now, Wiggins and Dossett, again, they have some SEC experience, and I think if Wiggins is healthy, there's really not much to discuss there. He's going to be a big-time arm for Arkansas. And honestly, again, I would go that far with Cooper Dossett. I think if he's healthy, he's going to be a guy that can really help Arkansas. I look forward to watching him. I think he could be a perfect guy to slot into that Dylan Carter type of role. And I know Dylan Carter didn't pitch a ton down the stretch, but he was very, available, a guy that they trusted. They used him twice on the weekend sometimes in SEC play. Like, had a lot of value, put up some really good numbers, and now is getting a chance to play some pro ball. I think Cooper Dossett could be in for that kind of, production as a redshirt junior, not as a sophomore, as the graphic says. But again, you just look at this list. Like, if I were to give you, like I gave you the left-handed pitchers, I gave you my top 3 pretty easily. If I were to give my top 3 of the righties, I mean, Gabe Gackel's certainly up there. I mean, I like Kersher a lot, but it's like, again, it's a little bit more TBD. There's a little bit more projection and, kind of not really knowing where guys go. And so it's going to be very interesting. And again, I'm going to be honest with you guys. In terms of like, do I think Arkansas is going to have a good pitching staff? I do. Like, I give Matt Hobbs a lot of benefit of the doubt. I think Gabe Gackel is going to be one of the best pitchers in the country. I really, really love the additions of McIlvain and Kersher. I think both of those guys are going to be like legitimate setup, potential closing type of SEC arms. Like, I really think they're that good. And I think getting Parker Coil back is huge. I'm high on Cole Gibler. Like, I think he's going to be very good. But I just think if you look at what Arkansas has on paper right now with their pitching staff and compare it to maybe this time a year ago or even a couple of years ago when you had Hagen Smith, I think there's a little bit less on paper in terms of just proven commodities. And again, does that mean I don't think Arkansas is going to have a really good pitching staff? No. But it's just there's a little bit more up in the air. And so I'm not saying I'm disappointed by it. I think if you had added Joey Volchko to this, maybe I'd feel a little bit different. In fact, I definitely would feel a lot different. And I think the one thing that is interesting, like you think back 2 years ago, again, Arkansas's pitching staff, you looked at the numbers, they were basically top 2 in the SEC in ERA, top 2 in the SEC in WHIP, top 2 in the SEC in strikeouts, top 2 in opponent's batting average, all that. But if you looked at the pitching staff, it really wasn't that super complete a staff. It was Hagen Smith, who was awesome, All-American, Golden Spikes finalist, a lights-out closer in Gackel, and then they kind of just pieced everything else together. But those two guys were so good that it took the overall numbers up. And, of course, when the guy who throws the most innings for you has like a sub-2 ERA for most of the year, you're going to have pretty good team numbers. And so I think if you looked at last year's pitching staff, the numbers, if you compare 2024 to 2025 in terms of Arkansas's pitching production, the numbers favor the 2024 group, But I think we all would probably agree the 2025 group pitching staff overall was probably a better, deeper, more reliable staff because they just had so many options. And I look at this year's group, and again, I kind of feel like it's kind of got shades of both. Like, I think depth is actually one thing that Arkansas does have. I mean, hell, you look at, like, I'll pull up his list again. Like, someone like Tate McGuire, who's a junior, was a big-time prospect coming out of high school, probably going to have a chance to get drafted. Like, that guy might be your, like, 9th or 10th or 11th arm. Someone like Colin Fisher, who's thrown a ton of innings, is like a guy that we maybe thought might have a chance to be a weekend starter. He might be your 5th best lefty, like he might be your number 11 arm on your pitching staff. And so I look at Arkansas's roster and I'm like, man, they've got a lot of depth. But as we found out in the postseason, depth can be a little bit overrated because you get down to these games, every coach shortens those leashes. Every coach, if you have 10 guys that you use throughout the SEC, schedule, that list is going to cut to 7 or 8 once you get to the postseason. And so that's kind of my big question with this pitching staff, and one that we're going to have to figure out in the next, 5 or 6 months here. Who are those top 6 or 7 guys that when it gets down to nut cutting time, who are you going to go to, and how do they stack up with the best in the country? I'm not saying that Arkansas doesn't stack up well and that they're not going to be very good, but I think it's a little bit less definitive than maybe the last couple of years where you kind of just knew who the guys were and you knew you had these things that you could kind of fall back on. And whereas with this year's pitching staff, I mean, hell, Gabe Gackle is a guy that you guys know I love. You guys know I think he's a stud. Even he hasn't proven it yet as a starter. Now, again, I think he's going to. I don't really have I'm not going to lose much sleep over that. But you just look at this pitching staff overall. A lot of the guys and the roles that they're going to be in are guys that have either never been in that role before or have not proven they can consistently, show out in that type of role. I mean, and that goes for Gackle, that goes for Gibbler, who might be seeing a different role, that goes for McIlvain, who's had an up and down career. Hell, even Parker Coil, a guy that I think there's a lot of stability and reliability with. He might be your new Sunday starter. That will be a new role for him. And so, again, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to tell you like, hey, Arkansas is in trouble, like their pitching staff sucks, because I don't think it's going to suck. I actually, if I were a betting man, I would say that Arkansas is probably going to have one of the top 4 or 5 pitching staffs in the SEC, which, as you know, will be, if you have a top 5 pitching staff in the SEC, means you probably have like a top 15 pitching staff in the country. And I do think Arkansas's lineup, I mean, we're not talking hitting today. I think Arkansas's lineup is on paper really, really good. I love the prospects there. I mean, last year in 2025, Arkansas had pretty much their best lineup in school history. I think if you compare the lineups on paper, they stack up pretty well. Like, I think this year, I think this coaching staff in the transfer portal and with the additions they made, some of the guys they were able to get back, some of the freshmen they were able to get, I feel like Arkansas's lineup on paper will be viewed as one of the better ones in the country. And so there's a little bit less, concern or curiosity or question marks there with the lineup. And I think it's going to carry them through a lot of the early portion of the season while they figure out this pitching staff. But I guess this year you're going in with, again, it's not concern. It's just like, we got to see this stuff. And again, I think Gabe Gackle is going to answer a lot of those questions as a Friday night starter. I think Cole Gibbler is going to be a really solid weekend starting option who's going to answer a lot of those questions. I think whatever role Parker Coyle is going to be in, he's going to answer those questions. I think Ethan McIlvain and Jackson Kershaw are going to answer those questions as well. I also think there's some freshmen on this team that are really going to help in a big way. Not to say that Arkansas didn't have that. I mean, hell, Cole Gibbler was a freshman last year. Carson Wiggins was a freshman last year. I think you could see maybe 3 or 4 freshman arms really make a push and really get into that weekend mix. And we'll see if Arkansas's returning veterans are able to kind of take that next step in their careers, guys like McGuire, guys like Colin Fisher. But again, it's just questions. And I don't mean to say that to freak you guys out, but it's just kind of the reality of the situation. And I think nationally, like when the December, January months roll around and you see Arkansas at like number 12 in a poll, you're going to be like, what the hell? How the hell did that happen? It's going to be because there are some questions with this pitching staff, and I think they have answers to those questions, but the questions are there nonetheless. Whereas if you just look at kind of like last year's roster, hell, even if you go back to 2024, like going into the season, we knew Hagen Smith was going to be very good. Brady Tiger was set up to be that Saturday guy. We all thought he was going to be a stud. Mason Molina, he was the top pitcher. He was one of the top pitchers in the portal that year. We felt pretty good about him. You had this loaded freshman class, like Gage Wood was coming back. Like, there really weren't that many question marks preseason going into the 2024 season and going into the 2025 season. I mean, you had the number 1 pitcher in the portal in Zach Root. You had the number 2 pitcher in the portal in Landon Beitelgeuse. You had Gabe Gackle, who we all kind of assumed was going to be very good. You had Christian Fouch, who was viewed as one of the top relievers in the country. You had Gage Wood, who was already getting a ton of buzz as a prospect. You had some freshmen, Gibbler and Wiggins. You also had some veterans in Carter and McIntyre, Parker Coil, Ben Bybee. Like, you had some returning guys as well. Like, you had you had guys at every single class that you kind of knew what you were getting, or you at least had a decent idea of what their roles could be, what they're capable of. And again, it's not even like I'm saying this team doesn't have all of that same capability. There's just a little bit more to be determined and a little bit more up in the air. And so it makes me, for me as a guy that covers the team and, loves following this program as thoroughly as I can, it makes me really excited to get out to fall practice, which is going to be here well before you know it. I mean, it's like week 2 of football season is about when they start doing those scrimmages. I can't wait to go to them and tell you guys what I see and sort of have more definitive stances on just how good some of these guys are and what they can do. But when I kind of look at this roster overall, because we're now pretty much entering the final stages of the offseason, the roster's all but set at this point. There will be maybe a move here or there, but there's not too many big changes coming. I look at Arkansas's lineup, and again, I think it stacks up on paper with anyone in the country, and I think it stacks up well with any of Arkansas's past lineups. The pitching staff, I think there's a ton of potential. I don't know for sure if on paper it's as good as last year's pitching staff, just as I was looking at it going into the season. And I imagine a lot of people nationally are going to have some of those same questions and concerns as well. And so I hope that didn't bum you out too much, but that's just kind of where I see things at this stage. And I look forward, again, like I said, having questions isn't a bad thing if you have answers to those questions. And I do think Arkansas has answers to those questions. And hell, I just think if 1 year ago today, I had told you, hey, I'm really confident, because 1 year ago today, we were all saying Nate Thompson sucks and he needs to be fired and all this. And we were saying that Matt Hobbs was the GOAT and he's the future head coach and he's the stud of all studs and all that. If 1 year ago today, I had told you, hey, I can guarantee you Arkansas has a good lineup. And the pitching staff has a lot of talent that Matt Hobbs is going to have to develop and sort of assign roles to. You probably would have signed up for that, right? Because you would have said, oh, I'm kind of worried about the offense, but I know we're going to be good at pitching. You probably would have signed up for that. I would have too. I think that's kind of the boat we're in here. I think Arkansas has a really good lineup that on paper doesn't have holes. You have options at every position. You've got versatility with some of your guys. We'll see who ends up playing shortstop. We'll see kind of what it ends up being. But you kind of know you have that group of 10 to 12 guys that can really carry you and can compete with everybody. Going to hit a ton of home runs, going to hit for average. Got some guys that can steal bases as well. I think Arkansas kind of has everything in their lineup. And I think the pitching staff has a ton of upside. And I think it has some guys that are going to be asked to take on some different roles. And I think those guys are capable of thriving in those roles. And I look forward to seeing them get that opportunity. But there's a little bit more for us to figure out with this pitching staff. And I look forward to doing that this fall and this spring leading up to the season. So I hope you stick with me here on the Baumbastic Podcast. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., Dave Van Horn is meeting with the media. So I look forward to hearing from the head hog. He won't be able to talk on all these guys because, some of them haven't officially filled out paperwork, aren't officially on campus, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But he'll be able to talk about the draft and the guys that just got drafted, the guys that are leaving, the guys that have been playing summer ball, kind of what things look like mentality-wise with this coaching staff. So always good to hear from DVH. So we're going to have an episode tomorrow kind of recapping what we heard from DVH, what we learned. So look forward to that as well. And should be another good week here on the Baumbastic Podcast. So appreciate you guys for listening. Make sure you give us that like, subscribe, do everything you got to do. Tell your friend, tell your mom, tell your aunt. The Baumbastic Podcast, the place to be. Let's have a great Tuesday, everybody, and woo damn